Hey, Mystic Michaela spiritual family. Welcome to Know Your Aura with Mystic Michaela. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Daria Lavelle, and she wrote her debut novel, Aftertaste. And what's interesting about Aftertaste is it's a ghost story and a love story. And it's really about what if you could have one last meal with someone you loved, someone you lost. And we're going to talk to her and talk about a lot of the interesting spiritual themes that run through the book. But first, hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys. All right, so Daria is in the weight room.
Yes.
We got a lot of stuff for her. We got some pens. She's a writer. Pencils,
because she's a writer.
Right. Paper. And then I figured...
writers need.
Sure. And then some cookware. I got her some cookware, too.
Because there's a lot of cooking in this book.
Yeah, a lot of measuring cups. Put in a spatula. There's a spatula in there for her. So we'll see what she cooks up. All right. So the term that's been thrown around this week in our house is clairgustance.
Yes. Clairgustance.
What is that?
Is a major theme in the book Aftertaste because it's a psychic ability to taste the beyond. So you have the physical ability to taste.
Okay.
But what if you taste something that you did not eat? And it's random, and it comes with a bit of a spiritual message. That's clairgustance.
Okay, so like all of a sudden I'm like walking down the street, and then I taste like an egg in my mouth?
Right, but usually with clairgustance, it has something psychic attached to it.
Okay.
Like it's a connection to somebody who's passed, like maybe you're tasting a recipe from grandma that you remember, or the way I experience clairgustance, honestly, is when I do animal readings.
Okay.
When I do animal readings, I'll taste things the animals are tasting. They'll give me that. So
you've eaten a lot of cat food and dog food?
No, it's more like if there's a message attached to it.
Do you know what the Purina Chow tastes like? Is that what you're telling me?
No, like I told this story before. But once I was reading someone's dog in a phone reading, and I started, I'm like, oh, there's something chewy in my mouth, like it's gummy, and it tastes like a stick of cheese. And she's like, that's so weird. She's like, I feed my dog cheese sticks. Okay. And I was tasting it. Because the dog was just like, I like those cheese sticks, Or I will say it happened once in a recent mediumship reading with somebody. I was reading a young woman, and I started getting a taste from her grandma, but it was I don't know where, I think she was from Eastern Europe, the grandma. And I was tasting like something, I don't know, like a soup. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but I was explaining to her, I'm like, what it tasted like. And I'm like, telling you right now, I've never had this in my life, but here it is. And she's like, oh, that's my grandma's soup. And it was some like Eastern European like soup recipe. There's probably cabbage in it or something. And I'm like, I'm like, so it's that's what it is. But in this book, it becomes a conduit.
So is this something that only you, because this has never happened to me, by the way. But is this only something that happens to you when you're doing like readings or tuning in? Like it wouldn't be just like you're watching TV and all of a sudden like you taste popcorn.
Well, a lot of us have experienced it, but you probably brush it off. Okay. So you might all of a sudden get nostalgic and or how do I put it? It's kind of, you remember something and it can pop in you, like, oh, grandma's lasagna. It's always like somebody who died's lasagna, or somebody who's something, and then you can taste it. Or if you're a cook, you're using it more than you think you are. All right, I had this pie at this restaurant. Let me try to remember the taste and taste my way back into making it. That you're using your clairgustance abilities when you kind of do that, because you're working it and you're getting the essential. The essence of it and bringing it back to you.
Okay. Well, here's one example for me.
Okay.
Now, I've never tasted it. So
yes.
We're throwing that out. But I do, and the kids and you both say, or all three of you, say that I do get weird when you make chocolate chip cookies.
You do.
Yeah. And you guys all have like jokes about me.
Yeah.
That I'm very possessive over these cookies.
You're always like, make cookies.
Right.
Like I burned the cookies the other day. You're like, you burned my cookies.
And and I also get like overly excited.
You get really excited about your
when
cookies.
You make these chocolate chip cookies, and they're great, by the way. They're fantastic. They're amazing.
Okay.
I love them.
Okay.
And now that I think about it, the only thing I'm thinking maybe you asked, did you ever have like a food memory?
Yeah.
And before we started recording, I said yes. My grandma June, always used to make chocolate chip cookies.
Aww.
And every time we come over, I'd always eat. That was my favorite thing.
That's very sweet.
That she would always make them single time that we would go to her house. Is that maybe along the lines of this? Because I really do miss those. I guess I really do. Like, if I think about it, I really maybe miss those cookies. And then when you make the cookies, I get like a little weird.
It feels connected to her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really sweet. I didn't know that about you either, which
I
is
didn't
really
know that
sweet.
until about 10 minutes ago.
Well, in this book that Daria wrote, Aftertaste, that would be the dish that would bring Grandma back to you.
It would be
like
her
that.
baking the cookies.
Yeah, that would bring her back to you. So yeah, that is an example of that, you know, and then like kind of tasting it, or when you remember something and then you can start kind of even tasting it, like the memory of it a little bit, like in the back of your throat, that's a clairgustance experience. So I think a lot of us have this way more than we realize it, but the more you notice it, the more you can connect to it and kind of strengthen it. Okay. Like I always say with all these gifts.
All right. Well, I'm not there yet, but I'm on 10 minutes ago, I started the journey. It's by clairgustance. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, you're going to talk to Daria.
It is spring. If you're like me, you're thinking about all the things you can kind of clean up or get rid of. And one of the things you can get rid of is your old deodorant, just like I did, because now it is time for Lumi. Lumi has outperformed any other deodorants I've ever used, period. It's long-lasting, it works everywhere, it smells great. If you're like me, you like unscented, and they have that option too. This stuff just works all day. It gives you a confidence that if you're on the fence about having, you don't need to with Lumi. Let me tell you, this stuff is working. Lumi is a whole body deodorant. That means it's safe to use anywhere on your body. Yep, you thought about it? That place, yep, you can use it there. It was crafted by an OBGYN who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And it's the #1 whole body deodorant formula. It has been clinically proven to block odor all day and odor control for up to 72 hours. All their products are baking soda free, paraben free. It's pH balanced for safe use below the belt. Comes in a variety of fresh, bright scents like clean tangerine, lavender sage, toasted coconut, or even unscented. Lumi's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine the 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, that equals to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code AURA for 15% off your first purchase at LumiDeodorant.com. That's code AURA at LumiDeodorant.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Lumi. Hey, Mystic Michaela spiritual family. I am so excited to introduce our guest today. Her name is Daria Lavelle, and her debut novel is called Aftertaste. It is a ghost story, a love story, and even a food story. And it all begins with a question: what if you could have one last meal with someone you loved, with someone you lost? Welcome, Daria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here.
I was just telling you before we started, I read your book twice because I'm an avid reader, and it is, when I say it's so different, and I really wanted to talk to you because you incorporate so many of the themes that we talk about over on this podcast, Know Your Aura.
I'm thrilled that you read it. I'm thrilled you enjoyed it.
Are you familiar with auras?
So I'll say ish. I'll say I'm a very generally spiritual person. I've never had my aura read, but I did have a friend in college who, whether this is accurate or not, felt like she could see auras and sense them. And she once told me, at least in college many years ago, that I had a fern green aura at the time, which is interesting. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. I'm so excited to learn more.
I love that. No, I just got chills because if it's okay, I'd love to read your aura because our listeners are so into that, and they're going to understand you better. They're going to be like, oh, we get her now. Like I that.
Love it.
Okay.
I would love to learn more about myself. So.
All right. So looking at you, I see 2 colors. I do see green, and I see a big indigo
backdrop.
Ooh.
So indigo to me is like emotionally psychic. So an ability to feel other people's feelings as your own, and a need to kind of put words to those feelings so that other people can connect to them in the different ways. I actually see a lot of indigos as writers. I see indigos as usually working one-on-one with people with therapy or whatnot, like life change progression things. And then the green is probably your ability to organize yourself and think
I laughed
big.
at that one.
I usually joke about greens. They're very good at the focused organization. Like if you care about it, you got it. But if it's right. And so I love also that I don't see a lot of green aura women. Because usually society will tell you don't focus or, stay smaller or stay quiet or don't share as much. So it's interesting that, you're here and you're writing and you're out and you're part of it.
The indigo definitely checks out. I feel like my whole life I've definitely been an empath and somebody who's looked at other people's emotions and been able to put myself in their shoes. Maybe it always felt really natural to me, but maybe in a way that isn't natural to other people. The green is funny to me. I laugh because I have 3 kids and I feel like everything is chaos.
It's like organized chaos.
Maybe I'm more organized than I think.
Okay, so my question... Okay, so in your book, Aftertaste, the main character has a really special ability. Mm-hmm. Could you explain it to us? Like, what is this ability?
Yeah, so the main character is called Constantine. He loses his dad at a young age, and relatively shortly thereafter, he begins to taste the flavors of the food of the dead. So he's able to kind of just, without summoning it, without really knowing why, these flavors appear in his mouth, and he just knows they're coming from someone who's died. And it's always a food. It's always something really intricately made in its completion, and he can taste every ingredient, every nuance. He understands all of the component parts really intimately, even foods he's never tasted, flavors he's never had. And so these flavors appear in his mouth, and then they disappear moments later. And the very first time it happens, it is a dish that he knows is related to his dad. He knows that it's his father's favorite dish, even though he's never tasted it himself. So that kind of starts his understanding of this connection and what it means, and that propels him throughout the whole course of the novel. And I came up with this idea, honestly, in a random writing session. It was very independent. It just sort of came to me. Like it occurred much like an aftertaste occurs to Constantine. It was the scene of this chef plating a dish in an apartment, and he finishes and the spirit comes through to taste the dish. And I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that it was really exciting to me and it was really special, and I wanted to unpack it and explore it. And then over many years, I was coming up with different pieces of what this story could be. Is it bigger? Is it smaller? Is it just him in this apartment? Is it something beyond that? And I was randomly researching, going down a rabbit hole, and I found an article about the psychic clairs. So everyone has heard of clairvoyance, right? The ability to see something from the spiritual realm. But apparently, and this was new to me, each of the 5 senses has a sort of psychic manifestation. So you can hear from the beyond, you can feel from the beyond, and you can also taste from the beyond. And that's called clairgustance. And once I kind of read this tiny article, something just like clicked off in my head. I was like, that's what he has. But he has it in this way where it's specifically tied to food and it's specifically tied to dishes. And I started to unpack that in my mind and think through, of course it's a meal. Meals are this connective, incredible thing between people. It's this sort of like Proustian Madeleine. It cements a moment of memory in your mind. And that's kind of what it does for Constantine.
That's beautiful. There's I just finished reading it again last night, so as you were talking, I got emotional again because the book really takes you on this ride with Constantine's journey of the clairgustance and how he avoids it, and then there's a part where he doesn't, and then it goes on without too many spoilers. But I thought it was interesting how there's this need to accept it, but first he's avoiding it. But then there's also a need for a balance with it. Yeah. And that part to me, I feel like it resonated really strongly Because to me, like in your book too, it's a lot about closure and accepting things, but not, holding on without holding on too tightly, and what letting go is and all that. All these themes in your book, obviously you meant to explore them, but were they inspired by something personal to you?
I think, so a couple of things. I think for me, a big part of what I was trying to do with this book was think about what it means to lose somebody and how different people grieve in different ways, and how do you kind of honor that person and bring them with you in your life. I've always been taught to believe like death is not the end. That's just ingrained in me as a person. And I've had my own experiences with people that I've lost where I feel their presence, or I have like a connective moment with them after they've passed away. And I wanted to capture what it feels like to go from this space where the loss is so profound that you can't see the beauty in still connecting with someone when they're gone. And then Constantine is a character, also Maura, she's another character in the book. They're affected by grief in this way where like they're blocked, they're stopped. They can't move on with their lives. They can't kind of see the forest through the grief, if you will. And so part of what happens to them in these journeys is this acceptance of, these people are physically gone, but they don't have to be gone forever. And holding on to the idea of just their physicality isn't serving you, it's not serving them. And how do you kind of come to terms and bring them with you in a different way?
It's such a unique way to explore that, because I feel like that's such a common human experience. And especially just being a psychic myself, just helping people with closure and moving forward. A lot of it is like you have to let them have their existence now in where they're at. Yes. And by doing what's good for you, you honor them. And you do it in their name with joy, instead of wanting it the way it used to be,
right.
which is hard. But I feel like just reading your book, it was such a unique and creative way to explore that with people who otherwise might have a hard time understanding that or where it hits in them. And that's where your indigo comes in, because I feel like you were able to, in a really nice way, like sneak attack little parts of myself. I'm like, oh, she made a connection, and I didn't even know she did that. Like, all of a sudden, I'm reading something, and it's a really, like I said, it's a really unique, like, interesting story, the way you've written it. And it's not a story anybody's ever read before, that's for sure. But the way you do it, it's like, oh my gosh, like, that immediately connects to a personal experience in my life, so...
Oh, that makes me really happy.
No, really. I'm like, I'm a fan. Okay, so my next question is, how many experiences with the clairs do you have? Because you like, man, you know something to write all this down.
I feel like my whole life I've experienced these moments of connectivity with something from beyond, and I feel like a lot of it manifests in this sort of weird synesthetic way. So I've definitely had dreams where I've had premonitory dreams. I've dreamt something and it's happened, it's come to life. One example, which is a very sad example, but I was turning, I don't even know, maybe 20 years old, and I was home from college, and we were going to have a family dinner. And I had this awful dream that my grandfather got ill during this dinner. And the next day we're all together and everything's fine. And so my family is very superstitious in this way where we do this thing where if you have a bad dream, you have to tell it so it doesn't happen. Well, shame on me. I didn't tell it because it freaked me out too much. And sure enough, there we are at this birthday dinner, and my grandfather starts to feel not well. And so it was this like very odd, like, what is going on? Was I just intuiting something? Did I somehow like manifest this, God forbid?
But yeah,
it was this like, it was this weird, like, something's happening in the ether. And then on a much more positive note, another experience I had was my grandmother. So she passed away, and we were very close, and she wanted grandchildren so much. And we were in the process of trying to give them to her, but it was tricky. And, I was in that period where it was like that 2-week wait where you don't know if you are or you aren't expecting. And I was sick as a dog. I had gotten some sort of virus, and I'm like laying in bed. I'm like, there's no way that anything has happened. And then I had gone in for a blood test to confirm my doctor's office. And I get a phone call, and sure enough, I was pregnant, which was so exciting and so beautiful. And then I look at my my calendar, and it was a year to the day that my grandmother passed away.
Oh my gosh!
And it goes deeper. So my grandmother was a Gemini, and so was my grandfather. And she always used to say that we're Gemini, we're twins. And I knew as soon as I got that phone call that it was on the day that she passed, the anniversary of her passing. I was like, I'm pregnant with twins. And my husband was like, you're out of your mind. There's no way. And a few weeks later, we went into the doctor's office, and I was pregnant with twins. And I knew it was like a gift from her. So throughout my life, I've had all of these moments where there's like this kind of spiritual connection. And then in terms of like being able to experience different senses, I think it happens when I write, actually. I'll have this experience where I'm searching for a word or a phrase, and I can't quite get it. And I start to like intuitively rub my fingers together, like I'm searching for a texture. Yeah. And then when I finally come on that word, it's like I feel it. It's like either velvety or it's rough, and like there's obviously nothing in my hand, but I have this weird synesthetic sensation.
Yes. No, that's a thing. Like, because you might be more tactile in your psychic abilities. Mm-hmm. Like, do you ever? Now, there's a tarot element in the book a little bit. Do you work with like cards or tarot stuff? Do you know how to do that?
So I love it as a theory. I will say I'm a very, very much a novice. Yeah. What I do, which is kind of, I think it's a cousin to tarot. I think it's really fair to say that. I love Nordic runes. It's something that I got into when I was a kid. I read a random article in a magazine.
It's so green. All my listeners are like, there's the green. That's so green. But keep going.
But yes, I read this random article, and I kid you not, I was a teenager, and they had like you had the physical magazine, and so they had these printouts of these little like fake runes made of paper, and I cut them out. I put them in a pouch, and I put them under my pillow, and I infused them with my energy.
Daria.
And then finally I got so into them, I made my own. Like, I actually took stones, and I drew the symbols on them. But I really loved it because I think much like tarot, it's got that same... It's not giving an answer so much as like reframing your own question. Mm-hmm. And I find that really helpful and really instructive. And whenever I'm really stuck, I'll go find my little rune pouch and pull, and I'll either do like the single pull or the past, present, future. So I don't know as much about tarot. I think it's more complex because there's so many more nuances. There's more cards. But I love the idea of framing something in terms of questions, and also like calling on something spiritual to help guide you.
That's so cool. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard of like anyone doing what you just said. And I hear all sorts of stuff. How old were you about? Do you remember?
Oh God. So I know this was a teen magazine. It's been lost to the sands of time, but
of course.
I must have been like 11 or 12. And it was
amazing.
So natural. I was like, but of course this is what you do. How have I not known about this my whole life?
That's really cool. Yeah. I because I saw that in the book, I was like, because I read it, and that's the thing, like, when I read books, sometimes I'll get a feel for the author. So that's why it's so cool to actually talk to you, because usually I'm just, like, talking to these people in my brain, but just thinking about it like a weirdo. But I'm like, I wonder if, because you to me feel extremely understanding of lots of different human emotions, and like understanding how things work and understanding different perspectives, and every character I was reading felt so distinct, but also like you or like personal or something. Mm-hmm. And my next question was, when you write, do you put pieces of yourself in your characters, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the different characters have different backgrounds, different histories, different points of view, but I try to put at least a little bit of my own personality into them in different ways. And it's sort of like, do I amplify, I don't know, loving to go out and having fun and connecting with people, and that becomes Frankie? Do I amplify growing up as an immigrant, and that becomes Constantine's background? Do I amplify this sort of like wanting to be the hero and doing it all myself and not asking for help, and that becomes Maura? So So I think that's part of what makes a character feel more real to me when I can hone into something that I do and that happens in my life. It's kind of just like a grounding point, and then a lot of it is fictional. I try not to write about myself too much.
Yeah.
I know a lot of writers do. They'll write about themselves. They'll write about like people they know in a thinly veiled way. To me, that's not the fun. Like, I love making all of it up.
Yeah, but I think you just bring them to life first, like energetically.
Yeah.
Because I can see
right.
that in you. It's kind of like you put a little, it's kind of like at Build-A-Bear when you stick the heart in.
Yes.
Because you got kids, so you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's like you put the little heart in, you're like, you're real.
Now you're alive.
Yeah, you're alive. There you are. And that's what all the characters feel really alive. And like when the book ends, you're like, oh, I want to hang out with these people more. They're really cool and they're interesting and they feel so real to me. But I feel like that's part of your gift,
Thank you. I mean, I walk around and there's moments where I'm like, oh, Costi would have loved that. Or like, Frankie would really be into this one thing.
You're like, yeah, they do feel real. It really comes across when you're reading it. And I think they need to in order to kind of, I don't know, get the emotional reaction that comes, as you're reading the book. But anyways, I think that's part of your gift as an author. So there's a really interesting way that you write about the afterlife, the way that you conceptualize, I won't spoil it, I don't know, the way that you conceptualize the afterlife, and even how it merges with the living world. What inspired that representation? Because that was unique.
Oh, that's fun. That's a good question. So I've always been obsessed with takes on the afterlife and what it's like. I think it makes death feel a lot less scary to me personally. Like, it makes it something I can wrap my head around and like envision a version of it. So I've always loved, the Hades Town take on it, or Greek mythology, that take on it, or even like Beetlejuice and it's this weird office. So the weirder the take, the more I'm like, I'm here for it. So when I started to first come up with this concept and I had that scene of this chef and the ghost and the food, I knew that food had to play a really important role in the afterlife if it was compelling enough and enough of a tether to bring somebody back and bring their spirit back. So I immediately started to kind of build around that. And I loved the idea of incorporating something that's so physical and so also ephemeral into the spiritual plane where things are not physical and kind of eternal. So I love that kind of juxtaposition. I'm not going to ruin what the afterlife looks like.
Me either.
But I will say that I started to explore, as I was researching kind of different backgrounds and different foods for the book, I found so many different cultures and different takes on how food and spirits are combined, or in some cases separated. Like, there are some cultures where food is used as this sort of pathway to bring the ancestors that we've lost back to us. And in other cultures, it's a way to kind of ward off an angry or hungry spirit. And so that whole concept of hunger and balance and satisfaction, all of that kind of went into play in my version of the afterlife. Because I also, there has to be the balance of the positive and the negative. And so if there's satisfaction and food and feeding, there also has to be hunger. And so triggering that hunger and like, what does an existential hunger look like? What does that feel like for a spirit? I think that there's so many ways in life that we hunger. And I think there's so many kind of different ways to be hungry. There's a physical hunger, obviously, for food, but there's also like hunger for affection, hunger for connection, hunger for success, like all of the different things that we seek as people. And I think that doesn't end in the spirit realm. And so I think the way that it manifests in the spirits that experience hunger that we see is a reflection of like how bad it feels to hunger in the real world.
That is really fascinating because it touches upon something that I think people get a little nervous about. Like, wait, you don't sprout wings and sit on a cloud and like you're like super happy. It's just interesting because like when I do my readings and I'll connect with people on the other side, they only give what they get me. I only get what they give me. I always say that. But it's interesting because they still have thoughts and I should have, would have, could have a little bit. Like they're still people, who've just like crossed over. And I think people can misinterpret that sometimes as, oh my God, are they unhappy or are they? So I like that your idea of considering them and considering it's that's why people just got to read it, because it's a really cool context in which to think about that and think about what's going on there. But it was interesting.
And also, just like in the living world, you know, you can find closure and you can find comfort even if you are hungry. You can find that same kind of closure in the other realm, I think.
Yes.
It's just a matter of like, how do you achieve that? So in the book, there's a specific way in which the spiritual kind of element, the ghosts and the living, have to come together to find that closure.
Yes. Which is, I never think, like, reading, when I was reading, I was, oh my gosh, and then what? And then what? And then what? Like that, like the anticipation of what happens is the way it unfolds. It's a real roller coaster. Okay, so this novel isn't just like an amazing description of psychic senses and the afterlife and whatnot, but also of the physical senses that food engages, and I guess the emotions and desires and longing and like what you said, satisfaction and whatnot. It's how, I don't know, I maybe already answered this, but I just thought, like, it was how did you balance writing between the psychic senses, the food senses, how they interplay? You know, was that like an easy, like, okay, food is a way to bring this in, or how did you link the two? What was that feeling?
Yeah, I think once I started to understand that the food is so incredibly tied to the person that it's related to, and I started to ask myself why, and like, why would my aftertaste be something different than yours? And why would, you know, even if it was my connection with somebody else, my aftertaste that would bring me back to them might be different than theirs to bring them back to me. So I started to play with what is food and how do we define food and how do we make those food memories and what goes into them. And that was sort of how I came to the spiritual connection, because I think every single flavor, every single dish that appears in the book that's a kind of tether between the living and the dead, a lot of them have, it's not necessarily that it's like the most delicious thing they ever eaten. A lot of them have meaning that's far deeper, that you have to like really understand the person and the people and what that moment was that built that dish to unpack it. So for instance, there's one dish that is fully burnt that I'm thinking of in the book that is like inedible. It's not great. But that's what the spirit needs to remind the living person that they're trying to connect with, of a particular way their relationship failed, and of a particular, it's almost like an olive branch, like, bring me back so we can fix this. So I think that's the kind of thing that I was thinking of as I started to build each dish, and every nuance of flavor became kind of a proxy for an emotion or a piece of the memory in my mind. So another example is the very first dish that Constantine makes that actually brings a spirit back in the book is a cocktail. And when the living person drinks this cocktail, every layer of the flavor of the cocktail reminds him of a different part of his wife's experience. She passed away from an illness, and so there's a floral in the cocktail, and that reminds him of the flowers at her hospital room. There's kind of like a salt sprinkle on the cocktail, and that reminds him of the saline drip. There's sort of this effervescence, and that reminds him of sitting in the park with her and the sunshine. So there are all of these different kind of triggers that you get, I think, from foods and flavors. Much like when you smell something, it brings something back to you. So I tried to incorporate all of that as kind of the tactile psychic sense.
Since reading your book, I've been paying way more attention to just like the foods shared in moments with family and friends, and how it creates an emotional connection, a tether, you know, between the physical and what binds us, what connects us together.
Yeah.
And when reading your book, when, you know, you get really into food descriptions, so you get really hungry reading your book too, by the way. I'm sure you've already heard that a bunch.
Read with a snack.
Yeah, you need to eat when you're reading this book. But and you were even like, oh, I would never try that, but maybe I would now, because you have a really great way of describing food and how excited people get about food and how into it they get, and how it can just excite you and get you in the mood for different situations or adventurous or whatnot. But the setting is very unique. So again, he's a chef, and so you can imagine it's a whole journey with that too. were you inspired by any certain, I don't know, restaurants or any certain journeys of food, culinary journeys? 'Cause that would have been fun.
So many. Basically every restaurant in Aftertaste is based on a real restaurant, with the exception of Duch, which is the restaurant that he opens at the end. It's named after him. That one is fully from my imagination, but based in a real place. There's I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's a subway component. It's all, it takes place in New York City. So there's a component to the restaurant that has to do with the subway. And that station really does exist in Manhattan. There really is that antique station. It's a defunct one that you can visit. But yeah, in terms of the restaurant scene, every single place that we go is some place that I have loved in my 20s, my 30s, living in the city, visiting the city, or a thinly veiled representation of it. So there is a Michelin-starred restaurant in the book where Kostya learns to cook. That is based on 11 Madison Park, which is a beautiful, very fancy Michelin-starred restaurant, kind of in the Flatiron Gramercy area. There is a speakeasy kind of bar situation, which is where Kostya works at the beginning of the book. That's based on Apotec, which is a really fun speakeasy. The original is down in Chinatown, and it's awesome. It's like you're walking down this little alleywayed street and you feel like you're on a Hollywood set, and it doesn't feel real, and you would never guess that there is this incredible cocktail bar at the end of it. So it's based on Apotec and this other speakeasy called Rain's Law Room. There are, the high and low cuisines. So there are halal trucks in this book. There's street meat. There's, bagel carts.
There's everything.
There's everything, because I feel like that's what's so fun about eating in New York City, that you can have this crazy high-end meal, or you can have this like hole-in-the-wall diner, drive-in, dive experience, and they're both really good in totally different ways. So I worked in a lot of the places that I loved.
Would you describe yourself as a bit of a foodie?
100%. More than a bit. I mean, I grew up cooking. I grew up eating everything. My parents are really incredible cooks, and they would cook lots of Ukrainian food, but also, like, as I got older especially, they would branch out. They would make all sorts of different cuisines. They would just buy a cookbook and be like, okay, we can do this now. So that was really fun. So that's how I grew up, and I think trying to incorporate as many different flavors as I could, because New York is such a cosmopolitan city and there are so many different flavor profiles and cultures and cuisines that I wanted to make sure that readers felt really seen in this book in different ways. So I tried to put in so many foods that they could refer to and kind of connect with.
I was overwhelmed for Constantine, because he would get these aftertastes, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'd have no idea what to do with that, because there are so many different cross-cultural meals and foods and spices, and he has to go shopping sometimes, and I'm like, how does he even, like, but I think that goes to show just the metaphorically, that's what I picked up from it, just when you get a taste of something and you're like, I need more of that, at the lengths you'll go to dive into it head first. Right. Especially when you want to, help with closure. Right. But I just thought it so interesting how he denies it, and then he's like full in. So just the balance.
I think because he had that one bad experience. And not to give any spoilers, but he had a very bad experience in his childhood trying to share these aftertastes with somebody. And I think that happens a lot when we're trying to have any sort of spiritual connection, right? Like the minute someone says, no, you're weird, this isn't normal, you're like, oh, I guess I can't talk about this, or people aren't going to accept me. So I think he has that experience with it. And it takes him until he's in his 30s to find people who support him and who believe him and who encourage it. Yeah,
you're right. That happens so often. So like a lot of our listeners get it, they're like, oh yeah, we support, or, you don't even have to say, oh, go do it. Right. But you can say, I hear you. I believe you. I'm listening. Well, you have kids, you get it. But it's kind of like, okay, whatever. And you're, of course, an artistic person. So you're probably like, right about it, like go for it. That's a good question. Are your kids into, like, do they write? Are they into all this as a mom? Are you like, all right.
So they're really little. So I have the twins are now 6.5. So they're just starting to get into all of, like, the artistic and kind of the creative, but it's really fun because I feel like I can see the gears turning and I can see the connections that they're making, and it's so interesting and so cool. And I think, as we get older, we lose that ability to just say yes to any possible pathway. And so it's really special to watch them because they're still in that phase where like, yes, anything is possible. Of course, like the bunny can put on wings and become a fairy and this and that. So it's really lovely to see. And then my youngest is 18 months, so he's not really exploring anything yet.
Oh, you're busy and you wrote a book. How? Now this is just pure curiosity. It has nothing to do with anything, but like, how did you find the time? Like, did you set aside time? Like, how do you give people who need to know how to do this in their own life? Like, how do you do both? What's your process?
So for a long time, I would write whenever I could. And it was like, so before I had children, I would have these like set aside times when I would go and write. I would leave work. I would go to a cafe. I would sit until, 10 p.m. and then I would go home. I found that, you can't wait for the ideal sort of situation anymore. You can't wait for like the perfect weather and the right time and you're like getting inspired. You have to just be like butt in chair. I'm going to do this now. I have 20 minutes while the baby's napping maybe. So let me just do it. And so I knew that this was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a writer. I've been a writer since I was 15, but I wanted to publish. And I just knew that I had to find the time, make the time. So even if that meant like, okay, everyone's asleep, now it's 10 p.m. and I can sit and work for 3 hours before I fall asleep at my laptop, like that's what I'll do. So I was carving out a lot of time, basically whenever I could. I threw away being precious about like, if I had my phone on me and I was waiting in line to pick up my kids from school, I would write like a sentence or two at a time just on my phone in my notes app. And then I would go back and I would incorporate it into the laptop later. So you kind of just like anytime you have a free moment, you're kind of thinking about it in your head and you're creating. Because you have a lot of those moments during the day, like you're at the grocery store, you're, waiting for something, you're folding laundry, whatever. You can still create whatever kind of art you're making. You can still create and connect in your mind. And then when you have like those breakthrough moments, write them down, incorporate them as you can. I think that's how all of this managed to happen.
No, that's really inspiring. It's just like seizing your moment where you can and maximizing your time and reworking things. Yeah. I think that just gave me chills because there's a lot of moms that listen. So you get it. Like you're in the mom zone and you're just
totally
like use your time and you made the choice. That's really good advice.
If you feel like it's for you, if you feel like something is your calling and it's like manifest it one sentence, one word at a time every day, do a little something, just thinking about it. Like it's that whole idea. It's kind of like the Jim Carrey analogy. Have you ever heard this? So Jim Carrey, when he was first starting out, this is like a famous story. He wrote himself a check for $1 million.
Right.
And he carried it in his wallet all the time. And it was a constant, like this little totem, this reminder of one day I'm going to make it. And sure enough, like within, I think a year of writing himself that check and seeing it and touching it, I think he booked like The Mask or Ace Ventura or something like that, like the big breakout role for him.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's part of it. Just like calling yourself whatever kind of artist you want to be or whatever you're trying to go to. Like you're not an imposter. You're doing it a little at a time.
Oh, thank you, Daria. That's just, it means, I feel like that's a lot of power. It's powerful things to know. Okay. What would you want? I think like when we make something and we put it out there, we have a goal, like an objective. Like I would love this to happen when somebody reads my book. Do you have a specific goal or objective, or what do you want? What would you hope somebody gets after reading Aftertaste?
Oh, what a good question. So I think I want 2 levels of experience. I want someone to put down the book and feel like, whoa, that was fun. That was wild. I didn't expect where that took me. That was a ride that I didn't see coming. It had all the twists and turns. I felt all the things. I laughed. I cried. I emoted, all of that. I want people to feel like they've been taken on a journey and be excited about that journey. But I think longer out, I want it to be a book that sticks with people and that changes the way that they think about connecting with the people that they love over whether it's a meal or something else. Like in this case, food is very much the analogy. And so for me, that's what I come back to. Like that's where I have the most connection with people in my life. But I think whether or not food is the thing for you, I hope you leave this book and think about, what are the ways I'm connecting with the people that I love? How am I going to use that connection to honor them when we're no longer together, in this physical, spiritual plane?
It's really nice. I'll tell you, for me, as much as I do connecting with other people and helping them connect with their loved ones on the other side, this book reminded me that I'm going to get emotional. This book reminded me that it's important for me to connect with people I've lost too, because a lot of times it's just too much.
Yeah.
And I'm sad. And I get that I'm like, oh, I get that like with Constantine and his dad. So that's what it did for me. So I'm just so honored that you came to Know Your Aura to share all this with us. And I know all the readers who get the book are going to be like, oh my gosh, that was a wild ride. and they're really going to enjoy it. Where can we find you? Tell us, where's pub date?
Yeah.
Give us everything.
Pub date is fast approaching. Pub date is May 20th, which is so terrifying to be birthing this book baby into the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But really fun. So May 20th, you can find the book anywhere books are sold. There is an amazing audiobook version. If you're into audiobook, it'll be obviously hardcover, ebook as well. And you can find me on basically any social at daria.lavelle.author. Especially Instagram is like where I do most of my posting and hanging out. So check me out there, and I'll be doing a little book tour. So if you head over to my site, darialavelle.com, you can see the events page. If I'm coming to a city near you, I would love to meet you. So come say hi.
Yes, and I would love a cookbook of this someday, by the way.
Oh, one day.
That'd be cool.
We did an event early on in New York City where we had a chef make some of the dishes from the book, which I had never, I was cooking in my mind. So I am a cook. I love to cook, but I didn't cook the dishes that I invented for the story. But then this chef did, and it was the wildest thing seeing somebody's interpretation of these things I invented for characters I made up for their most personal connections.
That's so surreal. That must have been wild. Yeah, wild. And me, because I've read it twice, I'd be like, oh my gosh, look, there's a lot of Easter eggs in here. And there are a lot of Easter eggs. It's really cool. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Daria. I really appreciate you. Oh. And Mystic Michaela Spiritual Family, this podcast is for you and about you, and we're so glad you spent some time with us today.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.